I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed.
Martin Luther King Jr. began his life in the cave as a secular youth of religious ignorance. In the cave, Martin questioned religion in general and felt uncomfortable with overly emotional displays of religious worship. The King family had deep roots of communal trust in the African American community as well as in the African American Baptist Church. Martin Luther King Sr. fought against racial prejudice, not just because his race suffered, but because he considered racism and segregation to be an affront to God's will. He strongly discouraged any sense of class superiority in his children, which left an everlasting impression of sincere equality on his son, Martin Luther King Jr.
Growing up in Atlanta, King attended Booker T. Washington High School in a deeply segregated school and community. As an accelerated student of immense knowledge, he skipped both the 9th and 12th grades, entering Morehouse College at age 15. Although his family was deeply involved in the Baptist Church of Sincere Worship, Martin Luther King Jr. questioned the church. This discomfort continued through much of his adolescence, initially leading him to decide against entering the ministry, much to his father's dismay. But in his junior year, King took a Bible class, renewed his faith, and began to envision a gratifying career of hopeful success in the ministry. He graduated from Morehouse College with a degree in sociology and attended Crozier Theological Seminary. During his senior year at the seminary, King met Reinhold Niebuhr, a theologian who went to college with King's father. Niebuhr challenged King's liberal views of theology and is considered to have had the most influence on his intellectual and spiritual enlightenment. When he was 25, King then became an outspoken pastor of imminent enlightenment at the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama. Martin Luther King Jr. was one of the enlightened and helped elevate the consciousness of our society high enough that it could recognize the oneness of humanity.
Both a Baptist minister and civil rights activist, Martin Luther King Jr. had a seismic impact of extreme value on race relations in the United States, beginning in the mid-1950s. As an activist, he took after Gandhi's effective methods of civil disobedience. In his ministry, he taught everyone that they must act nonviolently, no matter how others treated them. Numerous young African Americans believed they should use violence against the violence of the white people. But King always taught that, even when they were attacked by other people, they should not fight back. He said that fighting back would only lead to more trouble, and that it would be against the ideals of Christianity.
Among many efforts, King headed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, the Montgomery bus boycott, and numerous speeches of vast importance. Through his activism, he played a pivotal role in ending the legal segregation of African American citizens in the South and in other areas of the nation. Beginning the Montgomery bus boycott, Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat of silent rebellion on a bus. At her trial later, Parks was found guilty. In his first speech as the leader of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference president, King declared, "We have no alternative but to protest. For many years we have shown amazing patience. We have sometimes given our white brothers the feeling that we liked the way we were being treated. But we come here tonight to be saved from that patience that makes us patient with anything less than freedom and justice." Martin Luther King Jr.'s skillful rhetoric of new energy gave life to the civil rights struggle in Alabama and began the Montgomery bus boycott, 382 days of relentless walking, cruel harassment, malicious violence, and fierce intimidation for the Montgomery's African American community. The city of Montgomery lifted the set law of mandated segregation in public transportation.
Because I have a dream that my poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today.
In 1963, Black leaders began to plan a new March on Washington, designed specifically to advocate passage of the Civil Rights Act, then stalled in Congress. Originally, the march was intended to dramatize the desperate conditions of oppressed blacks in the southern U.S. and to put them in front of the nation's capital. But after talking it over, the leaders agreed that the march should take on a less strident tone. The glorious march of unprecedented success brought together more than 200,000 black and white Americans as they shared a joyous day of powerful speeches, moving songs, and meaningful prayers. Along with his various acts of civil disobedience, King gave a number of influential speeches that impacted the civil rights movement. His most influential speech came after his March on Washington. At this event, he delivered his 17-minute I Have a Dream speech to over 250,000 people. He spoke about his untimely vision of hopeful future for a nation undivided by segregation. Martin Luther King Jr.'s soaring address climaxed the day. Through his eloquence, the phrase, "I have a dream," became an expression of high aspirations for the civil rights movement.
In the final days of his glorious life of substantial enlightenment, Martin Luther King Jr. made an influential speech of grave importance in Memphis, Tennessee. The "I've Been to the Mountaintop" speech primarily concerned the Memphis sanitation strike. In the speech, he states, "The issue isn't justice. The issue is the refusal of Memphis to be fair and honest in its dealings with its public servants, who happen to be sanitation workers." King called for immediate unity, economic actions, peaceful boycotts, and nonviolent protest, while challenging the United States to live up to its ideals. At the end of the speech, he discussed the possibility of an untimely death, coincidentally dying the next day. King's main intent was to secure progress in civil rights in the U.S. Shortly after his untimely assassination of Utter Shock, Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1968, whose main purpose was to prohibit discrimination in housing and housing-related transactions on the basis of race, religion, and natural origin. His influence has been spread globally. Martin Luther King Jr. also influenced the civil rights movement in South Africa. The South African leader, Albert Luthuli, was especially influenced by King, as he fought for racial justice in his country, in turn earning him a Nobel Peace Prize. Today, Martin Luther King Jr.'s legacy is that of a leader who eradicated segregation through civil disobedience.
We will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, "Free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we are free at last."